API Conference, Elevating API Literacy.
An open source tool, like the Thesaurus and things and the rest, they allow you to build from ground up. But the two firefighters in this space at the moment are Stoplight and OpenAPI, right? So I put this tiny image right there to find out, for those of us that don't know Swagger, you see something like this maybe on your dock. Have you seen something like this, but you really did not know what it was? Yeah, so that is Swagger, and that's one thing. So let me briefly talk about Stoplight. Why I like Stoplight is the fact that you can fill in a form, literally, so it automates the process. I don't need to come here and sit and start writing, that the path is users, or the list is get where all, or whatever it is. You can see that it updates automatically. I don't need to do that. Stoplight allows me to basically, if I'm not very skilled at writing YAML, you're dealing with a long set of lines, you can't make mistakes, right? And I have to start debugging it. Stoplight allows you to basically fill a form that translates your service into OpenAPI. So for example, it's just going to ask you, tell me what the parameter is, tell me what the request body is, tell me what the examples are, and it's going to be automatically translated to OpenAPI. It's a two-way thing. You can define the spec, and it's going to render it for you, or you can fill the form. I'm kind of trying to be as lay as possible, and it will render for you. And so in this workshop, we're going to be using Stoplight because of the time. Yeah, so that's going to make our work faster. So those are some tools that you can go back and research, and I don't know if this thing will be. Oh shit. Great. I don't know if it was going to be that visible. I'm sorry, it is not. But I was just trying to show how there are two basic ways you can write OpenAPI files: YAML files and JSON. Once again, I have worked somewhere where they were writing their OpenAPI files in JSON, which is good. But one thing I have seen commonly across companies is JSON is good because engineers are more like, except you're doing Kubernetes and stuff, you kind of like really love JSON. But it's very limiting. YAML allows me to be as flexible as I want to be with my OpenAPI files, which is why it is the preference for me, and it was something that I really wanted to highlight before we go into the session. So now let's get a bit technical before the demo. We're going to discuss some building blocks of the spec, but this thing is not very visible. What do I do? Let me try and do this. Awesome, good. So first thing, these are like main components of OpenAPI specifications. There are a lot of others, but your files cannot do without this. So the first one is info, all your metadata, drama, your description, your versioning. If you have licenses, if you have terms of use and all that, plenty talk. That's where you catch it. Then we have servers. You know that you want people to test your APIs in real time, right? So you want to define your testing environments. Maybe you want to give people different options. You can define multiple servers, and right there in your editor, they can test it. And then paths. This is like the real core component one, where you define your APIs. So your endpoints, you define your endpoints, if it's post, your request, your body request, and all that stuff. If it's get any parameters, you define the responses and examples of those responses. And then components. Components is like the game changer for OpenAPI because it allows you to reuse. OpenAPI specifications in the sense that, for example, you have a service, you have different endpoints that will return 200 response, right? Right? You have a service that will run like maybe five different endpoints may run the same type of 200 status code with the same response message, right? So instead of defining 200 response twice or 3 times in your file, which could be like take up to like 10 lines each, I can use components to define it once and then reuse it. And then you reuse it with this simple line. Okay, it's not in this example, but by the way. So that's for components. So these are like basic structures of your OpenAPI specifications. Yeah, great. Now let's discuss the core components, which is like the parts where you define your endpoints and stuff. So in the parts, can you scan this QR code? I tried to put up a file so everybody could follow through and you could just look through as we were discussing it. So if you could scan, it's like a Google Drive. I don't think you can copy, but if you can copy, that would be great. You can copy, try it in editor.swagger.io. Just bring you to this guy, right? Yeah, so let's discuss parts. Parts is where you define your APIs, right? So we have this particular test guy / users. Okay, this shows the path, the endpoint itself. We have scenarios where we can have two different operations for a particular part, right? So we can specify as much if you have a get, but follow standards anyways. You can specify as much if you have a get request, but you can't specify to get. If you have a get request and a push request under that same part, you do that, then you can now come and talk about the rest of the endpoint operations, which is tags is optional. Tags can be used to categorize the endpoint. So for example, let me see if I can get this guy back. If I had another, if I come and UX is terrible for me. Okay. Great. So if I named this tag, let me say store. You see that we can now have two categories. So for example, your APIs have, for example, a payment system. You have banks, accounts, virtual USDs and all that stuff. That's where tag is useful, but then it's totally optional. Yeah, let's go into the main integrity. So if you have parameters to define, this is how you define them. If you have responses to define, this is how you define them and give examples. In case it's sounding gibberish, not to worry. We're going to have a live session about it, like ASAP. So I wanted us to go through this, have a feel of it, and then we can go into the next. So operations can be, as you know, let me allow us to respond. Operations can be, but I'm giving explain. Get, give, take, all right, thank you. So each operation can now have their summary, their description, their responses, etc. I don't know how much time I have here. Thank you. So, what's happening? Okay. Oh, this one is on. Thank you. You may have to stretch my dad this way. So let's get our hands dirty. I was going to be very dramatic. So yeah, let's get into this. Right. So I have this sample test API here that we'll be using. It's a very common example, pet store. But this is a place where you don't see the API spec. So we're going to be testing two endpoints from here. In the store endpoints, we're going to be documenting get inventory and creating an inventory order. Okay, creating an order. So we're going to test it here on their sample environment, then create the OpenAPI spec for it, and test it from whatever we generate from the specification file. Great. So for this one, before we get into the nitty-gritty, as I said earlier, I'll be using Stoplight for this demo. The good thing about these tools is that I could export my own API file from here and import it into Swagger. It will work the same way. So it limits, so for example, if your company is going through a migration of tools, especially for technical writers, you don't have to document all over again, right? Before eBook had all the OpenAPI support, before in my company we used to document it with tables, and it was a pain. Parameters, description. In table we have the name, description, example. Inside the example column we have code block. And it was a pain, right? If we were moving tools, we have to do it all over again because that tool will not render it the same way. But with your OpenAPI file, you can plug and play into, any documentation tool that does not support OpenAPI, digits, etc. So you can plug it into whatever OpenAPI tool that you use. So I think I have limited time, so we're just going to be running through this demo. So let's create a new project. I'm creating a new API file. You can import your existing API file. So if, for example, I was moving tools or I have the OpenAPI spec somewhere else, I could import it here and have to do no extra work. Or come and edit it and whatever it is. You can import YAML, JSON, your Postman collections, so you can see the interdependencies, right? So let's just be quick because it looks like they've cut short our time. Awesome, right. So let's document. The first one was the get store inventory. So this one is pretty straightforward. It's a get request that does not take any parameter at all. So if we try it here, we can see that this is what the response was. This is how the inventory looks like. Now we're going to document this API in Stoplight and see if, the usability. This is just a test API anyways, easy for your APIs. Yeah, it's the same. So first thing you want to do is so normally Stoplight scaffolds, something for you. Just the way, you build your Next.js app and all that, and React gives you scaffolds. So I'm going to just take away all these ones so we can have a clean slate. So now let's create a new path. We want to define our first endpoint. Oh, but we've not done overview. So you can then do your summary. One thing I wanted to show, I don't know if this projection supported. What? Okay, if this display would support it, but I'm trying to show you how it can do the code version of it. So I can come here and say my summary is API conf test. In the form, it's automatically updated. I can just, if I'm not very good with it, I can just fill a form or fill the form in quotes, and it's going to generate my OpenAPI spec for me. So this makes my job easier. You don't want to tell your manager that, oh, I'm still writing 1,000 lines of YAML file and whatever have you. So the first part that we want to document is store/inventory. It is a get request. So we're going to name this, come here, yeah. So we're going to name it get inventory. Awesome. So description, test get inventory, whatever you want it to be. It doesn't require us to use any parameters here, so we're good. But if you had headers, query params, and the rest, you can define them here. And then this particular one has, you can now document the responses. This particular display does not work for me because it doesn't share my entire screen. If we copy our example response, and it's a JSON body, you can select the type. You have multiple types of response types that you want to select. So another good thing for Stoplight is, I'm going to show you how this looks like if you were going to be coding it from scratch. And I generate what my response should look like. I make sure there's an example. Kind of like I'm rushing because we have limited time, so sorry about that. And then this is what you were going to be doing if you were going to be writing this from scratch. That's why I like Stoplight. In Swagger, a good thing about this is in Swagger, I could literally export. Export will give you a cleaner version, but let me just copy this and paste it here. Yeah, it's gonna give me some errors. But if you export the file literally, it'll give you a cleaner version, so you can pay no mind to that. So this is our store inventory. Once again, UI dramas, but if you have a larger screen, you get to see it very well. This is the example. We didn't have any parameters. This is how it looks like. You can check out the schema. So whoever was going through your docs is literally going to see all this. Let's go back to Stoplight. I was just trying to show you how dependent both of them are. One thing that we did not do is get the server that we want people to test with. So I think this is the server for this endpoint. That's something that you also define in your overview. here. Once again, a larger screen will work for you, but then because of this projector, you can't see everything clearly, so sorry. Okay. So if we decide to preview everything that we have done here on stoplight, we see that, okay, the name of our endpoint is get inventory, test get inventory, this is what the response looks like. People could have a glance at what your schema looks like. Not that a front-end developer would come in to look for, oh, where is this looking or trying to open. If we had like nested JSON here, you can actually like preview it easily, right? So let's try to test it. Thankfully, we can see that part of my screen. If we try to test this, we have tested the API successfully. It gives you the response, and that way people don't have to have local instances of your API to test it. I can decide to do the same in Swagger, try it out, especially why tools are good is because they allow me to have interactive demos, right? Try it out, execute it. Cause issue, okay, we did not define the part here. And we have the response body. Hopefully I still have time to show you how a post works. So let's define a new path. For post, we'll be using create place order. So this is what the endpoint looks like again. So you can, by default, it generates a get request. You can change it. No, not this one. Now let me use this to also show us how that these things are interdependent between each other. So for this store order, it's a get request. I'm too lazy to come here and define a new operation and delete it. So I just want to change this guy to post, and it automatically changes for me. So it reduces work time, the amount of time that you need. Let's see. So it's called place order. I'm going to want to copy the entire JSON to make my work easier. Fill in the quantity, select the date, put in a status, place the order, and let me try it out. Set up pest store locally, use Postman and all that, and try to maneuver their way around it. So let's go back to our slide because we're out of time. So 3 things that I would recommend from here is to try this on your own, implement it better, have different sample cases of your API files. You can export your JSON or YAML files, try them across different tools. Then, for services that are large, you may want to also check out how you can split these files into smaller components. So, for example, the same way you have file paths, you're pointing to your CSS from your HTML files, you can actually also do that with OpenAPI files. So people don't have to deal with extremely large number of lines of code. Then also deployment processes. With stuff like you can publish it, I can easily give her my URL, she can come in and test it. Same thing you can do with Swagger amongst other tools. And if you were looking for resources that have like in-depth tutorials and guides around this, you could check these 2 resources. I could share my slide after or give the organizers or whatever it is. They access me away. Thank you very much. I hope this was very lovely.
API Conference, Elevating API Literacy.